as the sun is already set on this fourth day of Tammuz. I just experienced a beautiful Shabbos at the Ohel, along with another about 8,000 people, some in homes, some in big army tents as myself, some in RVs. It's truly a spiritual experience about which I have some stories to share, but not today. I'm going to catch up on an incredible, fascinating insight from the Rebbe I was reminded about today on Parshas Korach, which is the parsha we just came from. So, which we read this past Shabbos in Shul. So Korach, the name itself, conjures images of conflict, of argument, discord, rebellion, and ultimately the earth opening up and swallowing him and all of his followers who rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader of the generation. The Rebbe takes us on a brilliant journey in what was Korach's perspective, what were his mistakes, what was his error, what was his conflict with Moshe, or with the world, or with God. And the Rebbe shows how all of these conflicts are portrayed and depicted in his name, in the letters of his name, Korach, Kuf Reish Chet. So the Rebbe spoke about this a few times, and it's mentioned in various different explanations. I'm going to go with one of them right now, and maybe more another time. But to give a quick background, the world was created through speech. By Yomer Elokim, and God said, let there be this, that, and the other. Let there be everything, and everything came into being. And Kabbalah and Hasidus teach us that every created being is animated and given life from the letters with which they were created. And they are the letters of the alphabet. And there's energy in those letters, in the name of the letter, in the form of the letter, in the number of the letter, etc., etc. And it goes infinitely the way the energy in the letters animate the actual being. It's spoken about in Sefer Yetzirah, which is a book which is attributed all the way back to Avraham Avinu, and many more Kabbalistic works. And the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe in the Tanya talks about how there's the letters themselves which carry energy, and then there are infinite amounts of formula and combinations of these letters and exchanging of letters, how one letter can be exchanged with another, and each of these are different formula, creative juices that create the world and keep it in existence. So too with the name Korach. What was Korach about, and how do we see it in his name? So the Torah tells us, the Midrash says it, the Torah tells us, Eila, it's a verse in the Torah, Eila toldot Shemayim va'aretz behi baram. And these are the chronicles of heaven and earth, behi baram, in their creation. But there's an extra letter Hey in that word, behi baram. And the Midrash and the Talmud explain, they say behi baram. Hashem created the world with the letter Hey, and through the letter Hey, in the form and format and energy of the letter Hey. What does that mean? There's many explanations. In this talk, the Rebbe explains that the letter Hey, in its form, consists of a line above, a horizontal line above, a vertical line on the right side, and on the left side, there's a small left leg, which has a gap from it to the horizontal line above. As you may know the letter Hey, and it's written here in the title too. That's the Hey. That's the way the world is meant to be. Rebbe explains that this line above, the horizontal line above, and the right leg which is attached to it, represent in Kabbalah, represent the Torah, our thoughts and our speech, our studying the Torah, understanding it, chewing it through, and disseminating it, explaining it to others, talking about it with others. But it's all about the Torah. That little left leg on the left side of the Hey represents our action, the deeds we do, our real life, the way we act. So, in a sense, the top line and the right leg represent the ideal, the way things are meant to be. The left, small, broken leg, in a sense, is the way we really are, the reality of the world we live in. Says the Rebbe, this paradigm of the Hey is the way the world was created and is meant to be. We're meant to study the Torah, internalize it, talk about it, and then when it comes to action, there's a struggle there. There's a tension between what we know and what we do. And that tension isn't always fun, isn't always desired, but it's always there. There's a tension between what we know, between the ideal and the real. And that's the gap between the Torah line above the Hey and that broken leg to the left, which represents our action. And that tension is meant to be there. But the tension, that action, is supposed to be informed by the Torah. There's the line above the Hey and the line to the right of the Hey. There's the Torah perspective, which is meant to inform our action and guide us and instruct us on how to live our lives. And that gap on the left side, says the Rebbe, is also a gap from the bottom up, in which we realize our coarseness, our humanity, our humanness, and the coarseness of this beautiful world in which we live. And we realize that it needs to be elevated, and we need to elevate ourselves to the realm of Torah, to the world of Torah, to holiness, to spirituality. And we do that. We elevate the world in our actions, and we dedicate time to study Torah, says the Rebbe. Even somebody who's completely immersed in the regular world of business, and they're not regular, their occupation is not to study Torah day and night, but they too will always dedicate some time, whether it's a few minutes a day, an hour a day, a week, a month, or a year, to studying Torah. So this is the way the world is meant to be. By contrast, says the Rebbe, look at Korach's name. Fascinatingly, seems like a play on letters or a play on words, but the Rebbe said it, so it must be real. And the Rebbe says, look at Korach's name. Korach, all three letters, Kuf Reish Chet, are all skewed Heys. They're the letter Hey gone wrong. Hey's gone wild. And he explains, the Kuf, the first letter of the name Korach, is a Hey with a long line. It goes all the way down below the line, below the right leg. That left leg of action dips way below it's meant to go. The Reish is a Hey without the action, without that left leg. And the Ches is a Hey with a gap closed. So here we have three letters, Kuf Reish Chet, which are all Heys gone wrong, Heys gone bad. And the Rebbe explains that these three letters portray and demonstrate Korach's perspective on life, or three different kinds of Korach perspectives that can be, all of which are wrong, and all of which will end up getting us swallowed by the earth. So it's kind of dangerous. Let's not go there. And the Rebbe explains. The Kuf, the letter Kuf, has the action, that left leg going down below the line. It's meant to be aligned with the right leg of the hay. The top and the right leg of the hay represent the Torah perspective on what should be our ideals. The left leg of the hay is meant to be aligned exactly where the Torah guides us to go. That left leg is supposed to be aligned exactly to the right leg. That left leg, representing action, is supposed to be guided by the principles of the Torah. We do what the Torah says, and that's why in the hay it's perfectly aligned. In the Kuf of Korach, it dips down below the hay, and that's the perspective of a person who says, I know what the Torah wants of me. I know I have ideals, but you can't really expect me to act how I know I should. You can't really expect me to live up to my ideals, to the Torah's ideals. In action, the standards of action and reality are different than the standards of idealism. And therefore, the Kuf in this person, the action dips down below and says, I will do what I feel is right at the time, and it's not necessarily aligned with what the Torah guides us to be and guides us how the Torah guides us to live. That's the Kuf. Moving on, says the Rebbe, the Reish of Korach's name is one who kind of gave up on all ideals in this sense, and he says what's important gave up on action. The Reish has no leg. Scrap that sentence. The Reish has no leg to it. It's the hay without the leg of action. So is the person who says action doesn't matter. It's not important. All that's important is my heart. All that's important are my ideals. I'm a Jew at heart. I love God. I love my people. And I love Israel. Let's not forget that. But to do a mitzvah, to observe a practical deed, it's really not important. Hamasehu ha'ikar, says the Rebbe. This guiding principle that the action is the main thing is not the guiding principle of the Reish in Korach's name, of the person that represents the Reish. Finally, we have the Ches. The Ches is a person where the hay's gap is closed. And that represents a person who says, it's all good. I don't need to have that tension between what I know is right and what I do, because everything is equal. It's all perfectly squared in God's eyes, whether I learn Torah or not, whether I observe the commandments or not. It's all equal. Whatever I do is fine. Anything is fine. Anything goes. Somewhat similar to the Kuf, but it's not really similar. Over here, it's a person who says, my action, my world, it's perfect the way it is. It doesn't need to be elevated. I don't have that yearning to elevate myself for the world. I don't feel my coarseness. I don't feel the coarseness of the world. Everything's perfect the way it is. And that's why there's no gap between the chet, the top of the hay, and the bottom leg representing action. Long story short, says the Rebbe, that these are all modes of operation that will cause destruction and chaos in this world, dispute and conflict. And it's the hay, the paradigm of the hay, that we're meant to bring into our lives. And the hay is the realization that there is the Torah perspective is what God wants of us, and then there's who we are, and there is a tension between us, the reality, our reality, and our ideals. And it's that tension that actually challenges us to be better people, to be stronger people, and brings us fulfillment, to make this world a better place. Long story short, that was this beautiful talk. I learned this with somebody about 12 years ago or 13 years ago, and I completely slipped my mind. And just today, he sent me a note. His name is Barry, and he'll watch this soon. And he said, remember what we learned way back when? Can you refresh my memory? And I took it as a sign from God that this is supposed to be today's running commentary. And so it was. And there's more. The Rebbe's in this talk. I'm not going to continue it, but I will tell you if you want to look it up. It's in Likutei Sichos, Volume 8, on this week's Torah portion in the Rebbe's Book of Torah, where the Rebbe continues to connect the three sins of Korach, the three errors, the three areas in which Korach debated with Moshe that we have in a previous running commentary about whether a house full of books needs to have a mezuzah, whether a tzitzis that has one string of techelet that is completely blue needs to have a string of techelet of blue, and madua titnasu al kahal Hashem, and why should the kohanim, the priests, be elevated among the Jews while everyone is special and holy. The Rebbe connects these three letters, the Kuf Reish and the Chet, to each of these three areas of debate. For that, you're on your own, and if you haven't yet gone to the Ohel and you're local to the Rebbe's Ohel, you still have time to go today or tomorrow. And if you're physically distant, then connect ohelchabad.org, send a letter online. It's a small world after all, and we're all connected. God bless you all. Thanks for watching. Share.